It's the year when the country picks its leader and the men who take the country forward to embrace incumbency or the winds of change. It's also a year when the world of Indian sports has to make tough and definite decisions in its quest for medals and trophies, but they won't have the choice of ballot. Welcome to Express Sports Podcast. You're listening to Game Time with me, Mihir, Vasavda and Amit, Kamath. Before we begin today's discussion, wishing you all a very happy new year. Belated he say, but since it's the year's first episode, a very, very happy new year to all of you. And as you would have guessed, today's discussion is about the important decisions India's sportspersons, coaches and managements will have to take. We have the Cricket World Cup, the T20 World Cup this year. There's the Olympics, and there are dozens of other important events which will mark and bookend this year. Amit, काफी जबरदस्त साल का शुरू होता है. In fact, the coming week itself is going to have so many crucial events. We'll have the Olympic qualifying places for shooting. We'll have the Asian Cup football. Soon after, the qualifying tournament for women's hockey team will begin, and we are coming off a week when India have concluded their tour of South Africa. अगर जो हम कह रहे थे कि last 6 months of the year 2023 were punishing/whirlwind, depending on what side of the fence you were at, ये साल कुछ ऐसा easy तरीके से शुरू नहीं हुआ है.
And Mihir, we are not even talking about all the chess things that are going to happen, especially with the candidates, with 5 Indians making it to a field of 16. So it's going to be a hectic year, big ticket events galore. All the world championships obviously will be there because everybody will be trying to qualify for the Olympics and trying to sneak into the Olympics at the last minute. So I'm assuming a lot of people will anyway be competing a whole lot, qualifying a whole lot. So there'll be plenty to go around. But so this week we are just going to talk about the 6 big questions, I think, confronting Indian sport heading to as we begin 2024.
Yes, right. So we do have 6 things, and we'll start off with the biggest, the most burning question of this year. Since it will be the year of the Cricket World Cup, the T20 World Cup, bang in middle of 2024 in a country which isn't really associated with cricket, at least as a co-host, it will be there, USA and West Indies. The big question, Amit, here is, should Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma play the T20 World Cup?
I like how you said burning question because I'm pretty sure after you said this, there'll be effigies of you and me burning from both sets of fans. Usually the Rohit fans are hating on Virat fans, and anybody who questions Rohit Sharma is a Virat fan naturally, and vice versa, right? So we are basically going to be being burnt by both sets of fans. I mean, it's nice for a change to unite both sets of fans maybe.
Or we'll unite them for the right reasons, because Sandeep Ji, in one of our pieces at the start of this year, it appeared on January 2nd, he argued pretty convincingly, in my opinion, that both of them should be there. There's no need to drop either of them. Whether the selectors think the same way, it's something that we'll know in a few weeks or a few days, because they were in South Africa, reportedly to chat with both of them. We don't know if that happened, but of course they were there. And Amit, if we were to look at both of them case by case, it's hard to leave out Virat Kohli. I mean, whatever we say about his T20 form and whether he should be playing or he should be focusing on tests, of course he hasn't played a single international T20 since the last T20 World Cup in 2022, but he had an incredible IPL last year. And when we'll be playing IPL, I think in March, April, May this year, we'll know, because just a month after the IPL, there will be the T20 World Cup.
Absolutely. But then, Mihir, my question maybe is that because he's himself not played in too many T20Is, as you mentioned, after the semi-final exit at the T20 World Cup in 2022, he's not played in T20s for India at all. And as we've seen, recently against Australia, we do have a bunch of, very capable players that can slot in. Whether we want to keep them on the sidelines to play both Rohit and Virat, I mean, a gigantic question mark, especially because, see, I know a lot of people will say in Rohit's case, there was the whole thing that he's a pace setter and stuff like that, which he did quite capably at the World Cup last year. But the problem with that is, T20 format is not something where you can, there is only one pace that you can run a T20. It's not something that you need a pace setter for. It's not a marathon, it's a 100-meter race.
My thing with, both these things, right? Virat Kohli, think he should be there for the simple reason that his class is undoubted. His form hasn't dipped at all. There is no evidence of that so far in the 50 over World Cup, IPL last year, or the test matches in South Africa. He's shown he's in pretty good nick. Also, the body language that he brings to the team, I'm a big fan of that. Energizes the team when it requires. That kind of ek josh jo missing rehta hai kabhi kabhi. He adds that bit to the team. I mean, he brings that crazy competitive mindset, which I think is extremely important if you have to win a tournament like this. Rohit Sharma, I'm a bit split, although, respectfully, I'll disagree with Sandeep G. And I feel that him not being there in the team would not kind of create that much of a void, I feel. Like you mentioned, there are plenty of young players who are on the fringes, knocking on the door, and can provide that kind of fiery start which the team needs. So that element's of course there, but Rohit brings a lot of calmness. Thoda pressure situations mein he has that ability to kind of, ek pin se jaise hum balloon ko prick kar de to kaise pura ye ho jata hai, waise he can kind of break the tension. So that's the great thing about him. But it's an incredibly tough call which the selectors will have to make. It kind of, we think of this and we are going back to that Dhoni era, right? When he had to take a call about the senior players back then and to decide whether include them in the team or not heading into the whole 2007 T20 World Cup and 2011 50 over World Cup cycle.
Absolutely. And Mihir, just to maybe just rebut what you were saying about Kohli being, that fire that he brings to the team. I mean, that is undisputable, I guess. But then eventually, if you look at it, RCB has never won the title, despite him being there with the team since the first season. In 2022, also Kohli was there in the team. They didn't reach anywhere beyond the semi-finals. He was there in the current World Cup team. They didn't make it to the final. He was a part of, the 2011 World Cup winning team. But then, I mean, back then, maybe he was not. His stature was... Exactly. So, I don't know whether we should be hanging on to him as somebody who brings the fire, because maybe it's a World Cup where maybe we don't need fire so much as proven people who can put numbers on the board and wickets on.
Well, it's interesting because, clearly we haven't managed to get a conclusive answer to this debate. And I'm sure for the 6 months, at least for the 4 months, 5 months of this year until the squad is finally announced, ye debate chalti rahegi. I can't see selectors coming out right now and saying ki nahi, dono nahi khelne wale hain. Till the IPL ends, or at least till the middle of the IPL, I'm sure this debate will rage on. So yeah, we are split on this. And I guess so is our nation on whether Rohit and Virat should be playing in the T20 World Cup. Amit?
Absolutely.
Mihir, I have a question. You mentioned it briefly, but could you spell it out a bit more? Like, what are we risking if both of them end up playing the T20 World Cup?
There is no clear-cut evidence, I feel at least, that we are risking anything as such. Of course, there might be an argument that, you'd be blocking entry of 2 other younger players, capable players who could be in the squad and make a difference. I guess a lot of times example is given of England and how they kind of changed the way they batted, the baseball thing, right? Virat doesn't have 100 plus every match wala strike rate. I'm talking completely off and I might be totally wrong when it comes to actual statistics, but he's still not seen as this very creative T20-ish kind of player. He's still seen a very traditional shot maker. He kind of sets his innings, ek flow mein aata hai, tab jaake aage baat banti hai. Rohit Sharma he's shown in the 50 over World Cup that he can give you great starts. I mean, apart from the age thing, which are on the wrong side of the 30s, as all 3 of us over here are, I don't think koi aur cheezein hai jo unko hindrance hai. And I think just for that reason, just to show that people on the wrong side of 30s aren't really done with, they should be in the team.
Well, fair enough. The second question that we are going to talk about, and I mean, this is a big question that is going to hang over Indian track and field at least, or Indian Olympic sports heading into 2024, which is an Olympic year, is Neeraj Chopra. How does Neeraj Chopra pace himself? Does he still go out, play in the Diamond League competitions, or conserve himself and just, restrict himself to maybe playing at the World Championships and then prioritizing the Paris Olympics? And, obviously, I know, as has been the case for the last at least 3 years, everybody is going to focus a lot on the 90-meter question, which means we don't have to focus on the 90-meter question. But yeah, I think the question is, how many competitions are too many competitions heading into an Olympic year? Because, I mean, let me just give you an example. In Tokyo 2020, Johannes Vetter was the most dominant javelin thrower in the world. I believe he had won some 8 or 9 competitions on the trot coming to Tokyo. And at the Tokyo, I believe he did not even qualify for the final. So that just kind of shows you, how you need to basically conserve yourself and not go all out way too early. Don't peak too early into the season. Just, keep yourself conserved. I don't know if Mihir agrees or if Mihir believes that he should be competing in more events leading up to Paris.
In theory, if we look at it, there isn't a lot for him to compete in the first 3 months of the year, which means that right now Neeraj is in Potchefstroom in South Africa, doing his strength and conditioning, doing his, seasonal, warm-up is perhaps not the right way to put it, but preparing for the long season ahead.
Getting back to shape after having eaten the one pastry that he's allowed himself for the week or something like that.
Something like that, exactly.
For the month.
So he is in Potchefstroom in South Africa till the end of February. He is there till 29th. We don't know what his plan is immediately after that, but if we look at the calendar, it's not up to the last week of April till April 27 when the first Diamond League takes place. I doubt he'll go there. My guess is that he'll directly aim for the Doha Diamond League in May. After that, there's barely anything. Of course, from May to July, there is a bunch of tournaments happening. How he picks and chooses, that will be interesting because I'm guessing he'll go to Doha. He should perhaps take part in the Paris Diamond League. That's on July 7th. It's barely weeks before the Olympics. Perfect for him to go and get a feel of the place, the weather and everything. So that should be ranking high on his agenda. And after that, it's very tricky. But 2 or 3 good tournaments behind his back. Hopefully he crosses the 90 mark. Amit, I know you mentioned कि वो हमें बात करने की जरूरत नहीं है उस पर, but I seriously feel that if he gets that 90 mark once, at least he'll be going into the Olympics thinking and being sure that he can do that. अगर जो उस दिन पे जरूरत पड़ गया for him to throw 90, and if he hasn't done that before, there will always be a doubt, which won't be the case if he manages in the tournaments that he competes in the build-up to the Paris Games. So I think 2 or 3 good tournaments, breach 90, and we should be good for the title defense.
Well, the third thing is going to be something that, it's a sport that has given India plenty of highs and of late plenty of heartbreaks, because we've had a Rio Olympics where Indian shooters came back with no medals. We've had a Tokyo Olympics where we've come back with no medals, and despite us being hot favorites in some events. And now we come to Paris. And before Paris, there is going to be a new way of figuring out which shooter actually goes to, Paris, whether it's the person who is winning the quota or whether, we have a trial system in which they will compete and then they will figure out who goes to the Paris Olympics. Mihir, can you just explain the new quota system that has come in for this year, at least for Paris? The trial system.
Yeah, so basically India will have 4 trials. Basically what trials mean is that the top shooters, the top ranked shooters of the country, they'll kind of have an internal competition. And since the level of shooting in India is pretty high, regardless of the Olympic medals coming or not, you have multiple shooters in most of the categories who are world class. So on a given day, anyone can do well, be in the contention for the medal. So the whole purpose is to ensure that the best person and the person in form actually goes to the Olympics, rather than someone, who might have won the quota 2 years ago and abhi Paris ke 2-3 mahine pehle might not be in good shape. So it's a proper weeding out system that's been proposed. So in that, what will happen is between now and May of this year, there will be multiple selection trials happening, an audition of sorts. Shooters will be marked according to the scores that they shoot in each of these trials. Someone who has won a quota, they'll get some bonus points. Someone who has international medals, they might be considered for even more bonus points. And those guys, those girls who are topping the selection trials will eventually be going for the Paris Olympics. It's a very comprehensive selection policy which was needed. But, the question is whether you select a shooter on current form or proven performers.
Now, Mir, that leads us to a very interesting question. Let's just assume that Rudransh Balasaheb Patil, who is our 10-meter rifle hotshot, he does not make it through the quota system despite having won the quota in the first place. then it begs a question that is this the right way to figure out who gets the quota, or should we have stuck with what we previously had?
I mean, it's a very simple thing. I truly feel that those who have had their quotas won in World Championships should be given proper bonus points, because World Championship is at times tougher than the Olympics. We've discussed the reasons for these in previous episodes. The level of competition is high, the field is pretty tight. So that's always the case. And there is no reason not to believe that if you won a World Championship medal, you won't be a favorite heading into the Olympics. So for that reason alone, I think someone like a Rudraksh Patil, who not just won the gold medal, but also was the world number one. If I'm not mistaken, he equaled the world record score as well. So someone like him should be given additional bonus points, so that for the simple reason that he doesn't need to worry about qualifying for Paris and he can focus on what he has to do. That clarity should have been there. We don't know. I mean, just the way our sports sometimes functions. हमें पता नहीं आज उनकी एक पॉलिसी है, 2 हफ्ते बाद उठ के कुछ और कर देंगे वो, तो हमें पता नहीं exactly क्या होगा. But on paper, this looks like a decent policy, apart from a few things here and there. But yeah, I seriously feel that people who are proven performers, someone like Rudraksh Patil, should be given a direct, or at least should be given some advantage heading into the games.
Well, the next big question is whether Lakshya Sen needs to switch to a more attacking game in an Olympic year. Because, I mean, if you look at his style, as our in-house badminton correspondent Shivani Naik puts it, his shots have kind of become predictable. His opponents are reading him pretty easily. He has a very defense-heavy style, which is, I mean, dazzling with dives and, reflex pickups and stuff like that. But, I mean, he's also kind of putting a lot of pressure on his body physically when he plays that. But does he need to switch up and move into a more attacking game in Paris? Because this year we don't know whether, serial big ticket, big event medal winner Sindhu is going to again win a medal at the Olympics. So if a badminton medal has to come, where does that come from? Obviously, I know the answer is going to be Chirag and Satvik, but can we get something in the singles event as well? And for that, what does Lakshya need to do?
Yeah, true. And also, Amit, I mean, the reason we are talking about Lakshya and not Chirag, Satvik or Pranoy is because Lakshya was this next big thing, or is this next big thing in world badminton, not just Indian badminton. And he seems to have just gone a little... I mean, his injury has had an undesired impact on his game. And I think his injury is also going to be a big factor on his change of style. As Shivani had mentioned, in her piece, that the shoulder injury which he had suffered, it's led to him losing timing on his smashes. And that is one of the reasons why he gets drawn into this very endless rallies. So he's working with Anup Sridhar, the former India player, and I mean, he is under the observation of Vimal Kumar, the great badminton coach from the Prakash Padukone Academy. So Vimal is monitoring him, Anup Sridhar is working daily with him. I think this is needed for Lakshya Sen to start consistently moving up in the rankings and assure himself of a place in the Paris Olympics, because a few bad tournaments and his qualification path could get tricky as well. He needs to be in top 16 in the next 4 months. So that is a big challenge for him.
The good news actually is that, in the first week of 2024, his current ranking is world number 16. So at least that is heartening. But then I think one of the things that goes maybe against him is the record that he accumulated over 2023 season, right? Where he had, I believe, 11 first round exits in 22 international competitions that he played. And that, I mean, he just lost to a completely random opponent at the nationals. So which is like a big, a mountain maybe for him to climb, which means very clearly that going into 2024, he needs to change something. He needs to, do something about that complete lack of form that he had at times in 2023.
Right. So we'll now move to wrestling, but, away slightly from the protesting wrestlers versus Brijbhushan Sharan Singh controversy, because, that is a topic which, of course, will occupy our mind space and everything, in the coming months as to what happens there. But there are a lot more pressing issues in wrestling which haven't really gotten the deserved attention as well. And one of the things, Amit, I think in that is just the management of the team, and in specific terms, if we talk, it will be the foreign coaches. Now, Amit, one thing जो हमेशा से common रही है between most of our medalists in wrestling, apart from Sakshi Malik, is that all of them had a foreign coach with them. This time, heading into the Paris Olympics, apart from Deepak Punia in the 86 kg category and Bajrang, who is about to get a foreign coach privately appointed, the teams do not have a foreign expert with them. And that, I think, is a big concern.
I think, Mihir, especially getting a foreign coach so late in the day, with barely, I think, 6 months remaining for the Olympics, that is again a big thing, because you need to kind of, in modern millennial parlance, vibe in a sense with the person, because obviously the coach that you hire will need you to do certain things on the mat, to do certain things in training, and we've seen with, this is a different sport altogether, but we've seen with somebody like a Sindhu that sometimes getting a foreign coach does not necessarily mean that you start churning out results immediately. So I mean, that is one big concern heading into Paris, that the timeline now, the window for hiring a foreign coach is kind of running out. So whether all these big hopes that we have in wrestling, they can get, a foreign coach appointed very fast, which I think is a bigger concern, because there are currently a lot of mind space. There's no federation. There's only an interim, ad hoc committee of sorts. So all of those things are there. So, I mean, we don't know how it's going to go down, especially with somebody like a Ravi Dahiya, who would be very keen to, defend his medal and who is kind of coming back from injury as well.
Right. I mean, I'll slightly differ there. I mean, we're running out of time, so I'll keep it very brief before we move to our last point. Is that the fact that these guys are training with Indian coaches, with all due respect, Indian coaches lack the technical knowledge, which will be helpful for the wrestlers at something like an Olympics. So even if they spend 2 months with a foreign coach, a good foreign coach, they'll still be benefiting a lot more compared to spending 6 months with an Indian coach. And for that reason, I think there should be a foreign coach with the team. So right now, I mean, Deepak Punia is training with Russia's Kamal Malikov, who was Ravi Dahiya's coach when he won the silver medal in Tokyo. And Bajrang has, he has almost agreed a deal with another Russian-born wrestler, Ali Shabanov, who will be helping Bajrang prepare for the Paris Olympics. Bajrang is yet to qualify, and so is Deepak. So that's something we'll keep an eye on.
Right. As we head to the last conversation, this is a question that was the highlight of the first point that we discussed. Age, new players versus the grizzled veterans. This is something along those lines. The question is whether when the Indian hockey team goes to the Olympics, trying to, maybe at least win a bronze medal as they did at Tokyo, or they can make it better with a better color at Paris, should they stick with Srijesh, who is the veteran, who is, I believe, 35 years of age at this point? So do we stick with Srijesh, or do we make the young Krishan Pathak, as our number one goalkeeper? As somebody who's covered hockey almost like it's his bread and butter sport, I think I should just keep quiet right now and give Mihir the floor.
No, yeah, I mean, Amit, we've both seen what happened in 2021 at the Tokyo Olympics with 5 seconds remaining, Germany getting a penalty corner. Everyone was beaten in terms of the Indian defense. And the last man standing was PR Srijesh, who stopped the ball from going into the net. And I think it is that quality of his to stand up, make his presence felt in the most pressure situations. I think that kind of stands him apart. Srijesh is not just a goalkeeper, he also does a lot of on-field coaching. So when the ball is not in India's half, he is always telling players where to stand, where to pass, where are the gaps on the field. Constantly he keeps on shouting, giving instructions. So he is an on-field coach technically of the team as well. So Srijesh brings a lot to the plate. Pathak, it's not to say that Pathak really is not good. That's not the point at all. Pathak, unfortunately, I think he was the only player from the 21 squad. Despite being there with the team, he did not win a medal because he was a reserve. And the reason, I think we should make it clear why India will have to choose between the two goalkeepers is that unlike in most other tournaments, in all of the tournaments where a team can have a squad of 18, At the Olympics, you can have only 16 players. And if you add 2 goalkeepers to those 16, it leaves you one lesser option of an outfield player. So that's the reason almost all coaches opt for just one goalkeeper and the remaining 15 are your outfield players. It's an impossible call. I think we'll get a lot more clarity when the Pro League matches begin in February, depending on who plays, how many minutes they play in every match. Right now, both goalkeepers, they play 1 quarter each. So I think as we get closer to May, the person who spends more time between the posts is an indication that he'll be the person also going to Paris.
Well, on that note, I think we should wrap up this conversation, this first podcast of 2024. If you have any thoughts on all of these 6 points, on whether Rohit and Virat should be playing in the T20 World Cup, whether Lakshya Sen needs to change up his strategy, whether Indian wrestlers need to hire foreign coaches or just power through with Indian coaches, what do you think about the selection policy for Indian shooters going to the Paris Olympics, or whether you prefer Krishan Pathak over PR Srijesh or vice versa heading to Paris Olympics, please don't hesitate to tweet to us or write to us. Well, that's all the time we have in the first podcast of 2024. This is me, Amit Kamath, my co-host Mihir Vasavda, and our producer Shashank Bhargava saying goodbye. Thank you for listening. Hope you had a good time listening.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.
My burning question was, how many leaves will you guys be able to take this year? Because last year, I'm guessing it would have been very hard. What about this year, guys?
Yeah. That's it, yeah. I hope उसको at least leave ले पाए हम लोग.
Yeah.
Should we stop recording or are we still recording?